Course outline ancient Indian history. First of all, the question which would immediately crop into your mind, what is the purpose of this segment? Where we are going to introduce, what is the importance of this segment where we are going to introduce not only the flow, the structure of chapters, which anyways you are going to do in a chronological manner, in a chronology. But more than that, the purpose of the course outline is to understand the demand of the ancient Indian history. So the demand of the area, very important. One of the often oft asked questions is that how should we prepare? Not only in terms of textbooks, which are the areas to emphasize? Many a times we find that there is a general tendency to ignore ancient Indian history, but given the recent pattern where 4 to 6 questions are asked from ancient Indian history and art and culture in prelims examination, it is a very high risk to ignore this section. There is a myth that ancient Indian history is more about facts. And also, it is a common problem that people find ancient Indian history, medieval history, quite difficult and sometimes boring in comparison to modern India. Maybe the reason is that we are not aware of what was there in ancient India. And when we also know that working on ancient Indian history, especially 3, 4 years back, is not going to pay huge dividend, so it was taken more as a burden, more as a necessary evil which has to be somehow covered and then left for the examination, especially in prelims. If you want, you can address 1 or 2 questions or leave it also. So, because of this, people have not really devoted or dedicated the right amount of effort and time, and sometimes this can backfire. Especially now, when we find that the cutoff is around 100, there are difficult questions from environment ecology, current affairs, which is at times a very hard nut to crack. So we have to point out those areas, select those areas which are not that easy like a modern India question, but definitely if prepared in the right spirit, in the right way, it can place you at a huge advantage of 10 to 12 marks. And the bigger question is how not to overdo the subject, because it is very easy to prepare the subject exhaustively if you have interest or if you understand that it is important. But given the vast amount of syllabus, I would never recommend to devote more than 15 to 18 days in covering entire ancient Indian history along with the other readings that you are doing. And you should not take up any additional books apart from R.S. Sharma Old NCERT Class 11. So R.S. Sharma Ancient Indian History Old NCERT Class 11, this book along with your tablet is more than sufficient to give you an overview and also the necessary tools and knowledge to help and solve the right questions. Let me tell you, there is no perfect book in the market, or it has not been written that can help you to solve every question. But if you cover these two, you can be rest assured that you will be able to not only address the questions but definitely eliminate the wrong options. And now the question is, after having understood and decided the source, the question is how to go about the subject. When the general level of awareness exposure to ancient Indian history is minimal, especially for students from science background, what should be the correct approach? What areas are to focus? What are the areas where only a brief perusal will do? And then we also need to have a structure. So before that, before going into details, the flow of the subject, which is equally very important, let us briefly get through the syllabus of UPSC with respect to ancient Indian history. Now, in the preliminary examination, we find that the syllabus mentions history of India from the beginning of community life to independence. Post independent India is generally not asked. However, there are times when outlier questions can be asked. So, I would say, from Stone Age to 1947, the syllabus has been broken up into ancient, medieval, and modern Indian history. In the mains examination, UPSC does not explicitly mention ancient history. But ancient history cannot be ignored because the study of Indian culture, which is a very important part of GS paper 1, cannot be understood. So ancient Indian culture is mentioned in terms of salient features of art forms, literature, architecture from ancient to modern times. This has a linkage with ancient Indian history. I always wonder how you are able to follow a silo based approach between history, that is ancient India, and cultural history. Both of them are intertwined. For example, if you have to read about the Mauryan stupas, the Buddhist stupas during Mauryan times, then you not only have to study about the Buddhist ideals, but while understanding the nature of material being used, the degree of ornamentation, you get a fair idea of the economic prosperity, the geographical spread, the development of transportation, and above all, the power of the patronage. So, political history, economic history, social history, and cultural history, they are interlinked. They are very much interlinked. Let me give you an example to make this clear. We know that, and you will be reading that Satavahana kings were patrons of Vedic Brahmanism. They patronized Brahmanism, they were Shaivites. But the queens of Satavahana kings, such as the mother of Gautamiputra Satkarni or Queen Naganika, they used to patronize Buddhism. Why? Because Satavahana ruled in Deccan, which was very close to the northern southern trade route, that is Dakshinapath, where a number of traders and merchants, they were followers of Buddhism and Jainism. So by giving donations to Buddhist caves, to the Buddhist viharas and monasteries, they were actually winning the support, the legitimacy of the Satvana rulers in the otherwise non-Brahmanical section was threatened. So, if you don't understand the purpose, for you, the patronage of Buddhist caves by the Satvana queens is merely a fact. A fact, when analyzed, it becomes an idea, an information, and a complete package. So, when students ask me that how far is it important to remember dates, I say don't remember dates, but at least have a framework of flow and continuity of events which are following. And when you have an overall structure, say from Stone Age to the beginning of agriculture, from beginning of agriculture to urbanization, then you can easily place milestones in the form of important years, or I would say, even if you are able to come up with centuries, it would make two. If you don't remember exactly when the Mauryan dynasty started, say 323 BC, at least you can say in the first quarter of 4th century BC, it started, it would be more than okay. But you need to understand the flow, how the events are connected, and then you will enjoy the subject. So please never take it for granted that because your main syllabus does not explicitly mention ancient Indian history, you can conveniently ignore. Let me tell you, 3 4 years back, a question was asked on decline of coinage. Decline of coinage in post Gupta period. It was not only asked how do you account for the decline of coinage, but also what was the medium of exchange. Now, coinage is definitely a part of art and culture. But you cannot answer this question without bringing into account the general trend of political decentralization, especially in North India, because of the system of land grants. So, because of the system of land grants, this political decentralization, we see the Samanta system coming up, India's feudal age started. So, without understanding the political history, the economic history, the social history, you will never be able to answer the question. Also, a question was asked with respect to the cultural developments, literary developments in the time of Krishna Dev Raya. Now, again, when we talk about the Vijayanagar kingdom, we have to understand not only the place, not only the region, but also how it was an assemblage of people who came up from nearby areas. Because in the Brahmani kingdom, which was the cradle of Urdu literature, here in the nearby Vijayanagar, it was the cradle, it was developing as a center of learning for literature in other languages, say Telugu, Kannada, Tamil, even Sanskrit. So, in this light, we have to understand and also the personality of Krishna Dev Raya, who himself was a notable literary figure. So, never make this mistake. But again, I do not mean to say that every time when you prepare for your mains examination, you have to make exactly the same amount of effort as you have done in your preliminary examination. But again, there is a writer that prepare in a way in the preliminary examination so that besides the fact you also have an overall framework in your mind. Now, if we talk about the course outline, the first thing that I always tell to students is that you should focus on continuity and flow. You should focus on continuity and flow. You should understand how the subject is moving, how the change is happening, what are the agencies of change. So always focus on agencies of change. Means if a change is happening, definitely there has to be a stimulant or a number of factors. So what are those factors because of which there is a change or there is a disruption in the flow? For example, I'll give you a simple example. In the later Vedic age, when we see agriculture was adopted, still agricultural produce did not contribute to urbanization. But around 6th century BC, we find that with the beginning of use of iron in agriculture, as historians like D.D. Koshambi, R.S. Sharma say, North India witnessed what is known as iron revolution. North India witnessed an iron revolution, and iron revolution catalyzed the development, the rise of urbanization, and also the rise of political states in the form of Mahajanpads. So we find Mahajanpads, 16 Mahajanpads. We see second urbanization, and also how second urbanization and development in the field of economy contributed to the growth of Buddhism and Jainism, and also patronage to a number of heterodox sects. We'll have to understand what are the heterodox sects. And in your syllabus, you have to do Buddhism, Jainism, and Ajivikas. So we do have to start the flow from the beginning of community life, Stone Age, to proto-historic period, that is IVC and Vedic age. We have to understand what is the prehistory. Prehistory is that period of time when the knowledge of the ancient past was based on, when the study was based on archaeological evidences only or archaeological sources only. Whereas in proto-history, we have a script. For example, the script was there in Indus Valley civilization, but the script was not decipherable. Also, in this proto-historic period, we find that the knowledge is available, the literary evidence is available, but from other sources. For example, with respect to Indus Valley civilization, we have a decipherable. Decipherable means you are able to read. We know that we have not been able to read the Indus Valley script. So, literary evidence is available from other sources, contemporary sources. For example, we have Mesopotamian sources. Now, with respect to Vedic age, there is also a difference of opinion among the historians that whether Vedic age belongs to a proto-historic period or not. Proto-historic where we have archaeological evidence and we have contemporary literary evidence from other sources. So there is a debate, and some of the historians believe that even though writing of Vedic knowledge was not done until 5th century BC, but yet the knowledge was preserved, and in the same, the knowledge was written in the same Brahmi script. So some believe that Vedic period is not, some believe that it is, yes. So we will still go by the conventional standard. Now, ancient historical period is that period which starts from 6th century BC. So this starts from 6th century BC, where the study of history is based on both archaeological sources and literary evidences. It is based on both archaeological sources. So we have 6th century BC, we have Mauryas, we have Guptas, history of South India, post Mauryas, post Gupta, pre Maurya, so all this. So from here, we have a better understanding of the historical events. Now, talking about prehistory, Stone Age. Why this is known as Stone Age? First of all, we know that because it was a part of prehistoric period, the Stone Age was studied mainly on the basis of tools. So this is known as Stone Age because the use of stone tools and the study of stone tools was the primary basis of understanding. But it would be wrong to say that only stone tools were the basis of study of the community life in this period from 5 lakh BC to 1000 BC. Some books also use 2800 BC because after 2800 we have the beginning of Indus Valley civilization, Chalcolithic period. So we have Stone Age understanding on the basis of stone tools. We also have understanding on the basis of, say, food habits, animal remains. We have habitation, that is housing. We have habitation. So we have a plethora, but the most important is stone tools. Now, again, talking about stone tools, the nature of stone tools, the shape, the size, the surface glaze has been changing from Paleolithic to Mesolithic and from Mesolithic to Neolithic. Now, this is Paleolithic era. Paleos means old stone. This is Paleo means old. Lithic means old Stone Age. Here we have a hunting gathering community. I'll not get into much detail. We are already going to do that. But this was the old Stone Age in which we have the beginning of community life. We have the beginning of large stone tools in the form of boulders. Boulders were used for chopping of meat. That was the purpose they used to hunt. Then we have Mesolithic. And Mesolithic period is also to be studied with respect to the change in climatic conditions. For example, Paleolithic era was a part of Pleistocene. It was a part of Pleistocene or the Ice Age. Whereas Mesolithic at 10,000 BC, Pleistocene Ice Age, which was a very difficult time for the growth of plants and animals, that is flora and fauna, this was succeeded by, in 10,000 BC, we had what is known as Holocene. And Holocene was a warm and humid climate. And in Holocene, we find Mesolithic and Neolithic. So now with warming of the climate, the sea level rises. Because of the rise of sea level, many of the people in the coastal belt move inwards. This also leads to increase in population, because of which now hunting, gathering and was not possible to cater to the increasing population demands, because of which probably we also had to explore new forms of food, and this would have also contributed to agriculture, something that we study in Neolithic era. Mesolithic era is also a time where we find that domestication of animals started. We have evidence from Adamgarh and Bagor. Mesolithic is the time when we also find the use of small tools, microliths. So as mankind is progressing, we find that the tools become smaller and more refined. In fact, in Neolithic era, microliths continued. But in Neolithic era, we have igneous rocks. And because the purpose of the stone tools was for grinding and for cutting of meat, so the igneous rocks, the tools were having polished surfaces. Neolithic era was known as New Stone Age. This was also the era where we find the beginning of agriculture. Anyways, we are going to discuss how the beginning of agriculture brought a transformative change about our perspective, about the way we lived our life. And it will be honest to say that all the changes that happened in mankind was only after some of the important inventions. First was definitely the invention of fire, which helped us to protect ourselves from wild animals in the clearing of forests, and also for better cooking of food. And then the next big invention was agriculture. We now were no longer dependent only on the accidental discovery of food or on animals, but also we were able to control. And this helped us to plan our future better. The agricultural surplus later gives rise to urbanization. We'll cover more how to store food. We needed pots to cook, to consume food. We needed pots. For making pots, we needed potters. So these all developments were like a chain reaction, one after the other or linked with one another. A vast web was being created. Let us understand some types of questions being asked in UPSC. For example, a question: the Upper Paleolithic age coincided with last phase of Ice Age. See now, what is the meaning of upper? So when archaeological evidence was done, for example, if this is the earth, this is the surface, then as you go deeper, at any point you start digging. As you go deeper, that means you are going into further past. So lower Paleolithic age will be the earliest, then middle Paleolithic age, and then the upper Paleolithic age. And I just gave you a brief idea that Paleolithic age was the last of Pleistocene. So definitely at upper Paleolithic age will be the last phase of Ice Age. Mesolithic and Neolithic belong to Holocene. Yes, that's true. So now you see that you know that first and second are definitely correct. So you can eliminate these two. And now you have to see Adamgarh. It is the evidence of domestication. Yes, this is also right. But many times you find that by eliminating few options, the answer becomes very obvious. That is what you have to learn in prelims. You have to be absolutely sure that this is correct or this is definitely not correct. Because if you are going to do that, you will have more and greater probability of getting the right answer. So you can see the answer is 1, 2, 3. Now, proto-history. Proto-historic period. We have to understand Indus Valley civilization. The name Indus Valley civilization has come. This was the first urbanization in Indian subcontinent. Uh, One of the greatest, I would say the greatest urban civilization in that time. And why the name Indus Valley? Because most of the urban sites, now let me tell you, not all the sites were across Indus River basins. Most of the urban sites were there. So in this chapter, we have to understand the geographical spread, how it was spread, and how on the basis of its vast geographical spread, Indus Valley civilization was the largest civilization in terms of its area than the Huanghu, the Mesopotamian civilization. And because of its geographical spread, the resource base was also vast. This we'll understand. And besides this, the Indus Valley people, they had very good trade connections by which they used to procure goods from all over India and all over the world. Then another exceptional aspect of IVC is their aspect of town planning with emphasis on hygiene, with emphasis on defense, with emphasis on drainage. So all this we have to understand. And in fact, even today, it is found that the elements of Indus Valley urban planning is found in the present day urban planning. So we have to understand that how they were able to judiciously use their prospects, how they were able to judiciously use the available resources, why we don't find any palaces, temples, all this in Indus Valley, despite having a belief system. We'll understand their subsistence base, very important. So we have to understand their subsistence base, the agriculture, trade and commerce, the trade networks, the items of trade. What was the basis of exchange? Was there any currency or not? What was the purpose of seals? What was the literacy level? All this, society and belief system. Is it right to say that the Pashupati seal refers to a person known as Proto Shiva? So we'll discuss about the seals, Pashupati seal. What elements of Indus Valley belief system is present in the present day society, such as the swastika symbol. We have to understand the swastika symbol. We have to understand Annapurna. So many of the historians have said that the worship of Mother Earth started from Indus Valley. Elements of change, how the Indus Valley people were different from the Aryans who came later, and then the various decline theories. It is very intriguing and interesting that even today, more and more theories are coming up. Only recently, in fact, in 2020, IIT Kharagpur had linked the decline of Dholavira. I'm sure you would have heard of Dholavira, recently uh, been a part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. So decline of Dholavira with the drying of river Saraswati. You have to understand all this in this aspect, and Indus Valley civilization is going to be exhaustively covered. Let us see a question on Indus Valley. Which of the following characterizes? They possessed great palaces and temples. Now, again, you don't have to remember everything, but if you understand their mindset behind town planning, then you will be able to analyze. Now, we know that first is definitely wrong. We will eliminate. They worshipped both male and female deities. Yes, it's right. They did worship. We have Mother Earth, we have Pashupati. They employed horse drawn chariots in warfare. Now, with respect to horse, there is a lot of controversy. A lot of controversy with respect to horse. Now, it is said that at a place known as Surkotada, horse horse bones have been found. But that is more of an exception. There was no general awareness. Otherwise, like other animal bones, they would have been found in plenty. There is no depiction. And as far as chariots are there, definitely it is wrong, because this is something that we associate with Aryans. So now we can eliminate. We can eliminate three. In fact, we don't have to. We already have our right answer. So we find that many a times the questions can be answered with the help of the elimination method, where you're absolutely sure, and you will be absolutely sure of an option only when you have covered the subject, any portion, with detail and with complete comprehension. Now, moving to Vedic age. Vedic age from 1500 BC to 600 BC. Now, the name Vedic age has come because the knowledge, information about the society, economy, polity, belief system, everything else is based on the Vedic texts. Even if the Vedic texts were compiled, as we have just referred, only after 500 BC. The Vedic literature is known as Shruti literature. Shruti is a word which means to hear. So the Vedic knowledge has been transmitted across generations through hearing with the help of mnemonics. We'll be discussing all this. Vedic age is also known as the age of Aryans. Who were Aryans? What was the basis of their origin? Were the Aryans indigenous people or they were from outside? We are going to discuss everything in detail. But let me tell you, Aryans were, they constituted a linguistic group, not a ethnic race, who came based on a number of studies and conclusion, mainly from Central Asian steppes region. In this chapter, which we'll definitely break into two parts, early Vedic age from 1500 BC to 1000 BC, and later Vedic age from 1000 BC to 600 BC. We will understand why we have this dual classification, and also the element of change and continuity. Always remember this aspect. What is changing and what remains same? Continuity and change. If you understand this, then entire history will appear to you like a story. A story with various twists and turns, a story with many returning points, and a story with points of analysis as well. So if you study every chapter in this way, I'll tell you, you start with the basis background every chapter. For example, when you study about, say, Vedic age, when you study about Aryans, start by questioning a very basic thing. Who were Aryans? What is the meaning of the word Aryan? We know that Aryan is a word derived from Arya, means superior or high born. What was their origin? How did they come to India? Why did they come to the Indian subcontinent? Why is there a controversy regarding their indigenous origin? How they expanded from northwest India to the entire Gangetic basin, eventually settling in the Magad region. the nature of their polity in early, in later. In early, it was more like a tribal polity, it was more democratic. In later, it was more getting towards a centralized polity, but still, it was not a monarchy, it was more like a pre phase of monarchy. Then its economy, how, what was the basis of change, agency of change. Then its religious belief, society, Varna system. We have to study Varna system, but we also have to study how Varna and caste are related. So when you understand a subject in its entirety, then you get a comprehensive view, and maybe then you can make a correlation with the present times. For example, women in Vedic age. A question can be asked. For example, development of agriculture in Vedic age. So always first frame a structure of a chapter and then start feeding information or data, whatever you get. Then you will have a comprehensive view. Let us see a question, what type of questions have been asked with respect to difference between Rig Vedic Aryans. Why Rig Vedic? Because early Vedic age, we only have Rig Veda. So early Vedic age is also known as Rig Veda, Rig Vedic age. And Indus Valley people. What are the statements which are correct or wrong? Rig Vedic Aryans used coat of mail and helmet in warfare, whereas Indus Valley people did not have any evidence of them. Yes, absolutely. We do not have any evidence of weapons from IVC. So if you know this, you can say yes, it is right. Rig Vedic people knew gold, silver, copper. Indus Valley people knew only copper and iron. Now here, there is no evidence of iron in India. No evidence of iron in India before 6th century BC. That is in agriculture. So we know that Indus Valley people knew the use of copper and bronze as a metallic alloy. The earliest use of iron was not until 1100 BC from megalithic times. So this is wrong. And if this is wrong, definitely second will go. Rig Vedic Aryans had domesticated the horse. This is also wrong. So we can see that second, third, first is the right answer. You can see first is the right answer. Then we have ancient history. We have rise of heterodox sects. Heterodox sects were as many as 62 sects. As many as 62 sects were there. And why they were known as heterodox? Because heterodox here means belonging to Nastika philosophy. That is, these heterodox sects emerged as a reaction. There was problem in the Vedic setup, so certain people were unhappy and they came up with their own belief system. As a reaction to the Vedic belief, thought, and practices. And among these heterodox sects, you have to focus on Buddhism and Jainism mainly. In the recent times, questions from Buddhism and Jainism have been asked mainly with respect to Buddhist and Jaina philosophy. So please take note of this aspect. Questions from Buddhism and Jainism is also being asked with respect to culture and also with respect to impact of Buddhism and Jainism on the society in around 6th century BC. This is something that is interesting. Now, apart from this, you may also have to prepare Ajivikas. Let's see a question, simple question. Even if you don't know, that's fine. Consider the following statements. Now, Mahayana Buddhism. We find that Buddhism was eventually broken up into two halves. Hinayan, which considered Buddha as a great teacher, not as God. They worshipped Buddha, or they venerated, respected Buddha through symbols, not through image or idol worship. And in the Hinayan Buddhism, they believe themselves to be closer to the original tenets. Hence, they are known as the elder school. So, deification of Buddha. Yes, Buddha is a deity. Trading the path of Bodhisattvas. Now, Bodhisattvas were the monks of Mahayana Buddhism who believed in social service. They delayed it is said that they delayed their own attainment of moksha for helping others to attain. and the name attain moksha and or nirvana, and the name Mahayan is actually a symbolism of a great vehicle. So in Mahayan Buddhism, it is said that it is possible for even a devotee who is not a monk, even for a follower who is not a monk, to attain nirvana. So it is more accommodative, more inclusive. Image worship, yes, it is. So all of them are right. I would say this is probably a very easy question. Then we have pre-Mauryan era. In pre-Mauryan era, we have to discuss the rise of 16 Mahajanpad, among which Magad. We have to discuss how and why Magad remained the seat of power in India for a long time, the role of various personalities, important rulers, and then we have to discuss about Alexander's invasion. Mainly, yes, before Alexander there was Persian invasion also, but Alexander's invasion, it was no event. Some say that it was a no event. So we have to understand the consequence. Before Alexander, also we have Persian invasion, Darius. Now, let me tell you the questions which are being asked in the recent times are less of political history. Yes, you should know about the wars and battles, but more than that, it is very important for you to understand the impact, the consequence in terms of economy, culture, society, belief system. So this is something important, and we know that Alexander's invasion in northwest, subordination and defeat of the small principalities paved way or facilitated the task of Chandragupta Maurya, who established the Mauryan Empire. We have to understand the Persian invasion. In fact, I would say the Persian attacks has to be understood in terms of its cultural impact. Kharosti script, polishing. So how in the Mauryan Empire, Mauryan culture, we have an impact of Greek and the Persians coming up. In fact, it is said that the very idea of erecting polished pillars with inscribed messages was a Persian tradition. However, it is another thing that the Persians had a different way of erecting them, embellishing them, and the motivation or the objective was also very different in Persia than it was in India. So we have to understand the difference also, and how Ashok gave pillar erection a different perspective, made it a strategic tool to consolidate his hold over the empire, not to glorify himself or to develop a personality cult like how Darius had done in Persia. So it was a Persian tradition that after every military victory, they used to erect pillars inscribed with eulogistic messages in their glory. But here, Ashok used to send messages to his officials, to his people who used to talk to them, and it revealed. So it is said that the Ashokan pillars were more about the perspective of Ashok. It appears that Ashokan pillars were like a autobiography of Ashok, telling us or helping us to understand the various facets of this great emperor. And you would not believe that Ashok was virtually unknown in the most recent of times, unless a script in Musky in which alongside Devnam Piyadashi. So the name actually which comes up is not Ashok, but it was Devnam Piyadashi in most of the Ashokan pillars, and only in the Musky pillar for the first time alongside Devnam Piyadashi, Ashok Raja was mentioned. So because of which we were able to study. So we'll understand the significance of pillar sculpture also which developed in the later times. So again you see, with reference to the cultural history of memorizing dynastic, the tales was the profession of who were those who used to actually memorize. Magad is the right answer of this.